Hello and welcome to the Bee Formless CEO podcast. One of my favorite cities with one of my, haven't even met Joseph yet, Joseph Santana. I'm about to say with one of my favorite persons. But Joseph, all the way from New York City, currently where you are right now, you are, what, did you say you're 40 minutes from Times Square? Like literally.
I am. I am. I can actually drive there in about 40 minutes or so on a good traffic day. On a bad traffic day, it might take a little longer.
Just love. I can just see Times Square there. I can just see you in New York City. Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening, Friday. Yeah, welcome to the show, Joe.
My pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's exciting. So, Joe, you're the CEO of Joseph Santana LLC, which offers leadership development, DEI strategy, consulting, coaching, and training. Right up my alley. You're also the founder and chairman of CDO Power Circle, love that, which is an association of the chief diversity officers in large organizations. Creator and host of the ERG Power Talk. You've got all these little acronyms, LLC, CDO, ERG. I'm like, you kind of hurting my brain right now because I'm like, what do all these mean? But ERG Power Talk podcast, and you're an author and futurist speaker. Pretty impressive, Joe. Tell us about tell us about when your company started, how you got into all of this.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. So, interesting enough, my background originally was I was a line executive, and I ran an outsourcing organization in the IT space. Educationally, I come from the finance world, but I got into IT and I worked in outsourcing companies. And one of the very first things that I discovered was that in the outsourcing business, the most important thing is that once you close a contract, you have to be ready to go in there and start serving that client. The
Mm.
quicker you can do that, the quicker you can realize revenue. And when I was in that role, one of the things that we found was that our leadership bench was getting thinner. So our sales was picking up. And in organizations, sometimes they beef up certain parts of the organization, but then another area just can't keep up with the speed of the transactions. So a lot of beefing up happened on the sales side. It wasn't matched by the leadership bench. And one of the things I noticed right away was that there were no women on the leadership bench. Even though we had women in the company, none of them were making it into the leadership bench. So I started to sleuth around a little bit as to why, because I thought there were a lot of women that were smart enough to actually move into those leadership roles. And lo and behold, what I found was that our training programs were set up in such a way that when a lot of the men who came into the technical side wanted to become leaders and they showed the aptitude for it, the training program taught them basically what the entire process was, both the technical side and the logistics side. But a lot of the women that came into the company came to the logistics side, and there was no corresponding window into the technical side. So
Um,
there was no way for them to get that holistic view. So we made a very small change in terms of the training that we did, and women started to show up as potential leaders on that bench. Now, the interesting thing is that as a result of that, it sped up the cycle from sales to delivery. And that ended up creating a 17% revenue uptick
wow.
impact.
Wow.
And when I saw that, and I was in that role, that line executive role, I began to see how exclusion could hurt an organization and how creating that greater inclusion could be beneficial. So I began to look for more of these weak links in the organization. Sure enough, I found them. And then later on, as a result of the way we were performing, I was asked, no, what are you doing exactly? And how are you doing it? And that's what led to some conversations with the country level CEO. That's what led later on to when they were putting together a country level diversity, equity, and inclusion, or diversity and inclusion program, as they called it then. They decided that instead of going the usual route, which is get somebody from HR into that role, they channeled me into that role. They asked me if I would do it. I enjoyed doing it, loved doing it. I ended up actually working with multiple organizations within this big conglomerate and literally identifying opportunities for them to increase their revenue or lower their costs while at the same time producing social good. So I've been doing this within that role decades ago.
So when did you,
And
yeah, I was about to ask you, Joe, when did you actually, like, what year was this? Like, tell me if you don't want to, like, tell me
no,
what,
no, no, no.
because you were
It
like,
actually,
yeah, ahead of your time. Like, you're a future, you're an absolute, yeah.
and I think the reason for that is that when I started doing this, I came at it from a business lens. I,
Mm,
I always felt like I always felt I always liked the idea of fairness. I thought that it was good to give everybody opportunity and to open up opportunity to different people. But until that experience, which happened back in the year 2000, 1998, around that time frame, back in the 1990s, when I realized that, that's when it hit me that, hey, to use an old expression that I've heard people say, I thought, I can sell that. Like, this is something that I can propose to the organization that's going to lock in not only with the interests of the organization to appear to be benevolent and good, but it has some real bottom line impact to it as
yeah.
well. So I started doing that. And then in 2012, I left the organization I was with. And funny enough, I left the organization I was with. I wasn't sure what I was going to do after that. I just thought I had done enough in the corporate space and I was looking for something else to do. I liked the idea of working in this particular space of inclusion and diversity. And while I was in Paris as a tourist, a friend of mine called up and said that they were doing something over there where they were trying to engage more of their executives. And could I meet with this woman that was part of this ministry that was putting this together? And I did it. And then I realized, oh, this is my path. This is what I enjoy doing. And this is something I can do that will not only do financial good for organizations, but also provide some social good. And that was the birth of the company. I came back and I started partnering with different people, and I started working with different organizations. And I've always driven this idea of that this is something that when you focus on doing it in such a way that it benefits the organization, it ends up benefiting people as well.
Mm,
Like, for example, when I did what I did that benefited the organization by increasing its revenue by 17%, it also created more opportunity for the women.
yeah.
So it literally created a social good as a byproduct of basically a business good.
Yeah.
And I've seen that again and again and again. And so I've always driven that, and I've always positioned it that way. And what I have to say is that with the recent pushback that's happened in the United States, people are more receptive to that now than they were
Mm,
before. Because before, people felt like, well, no, we don't really have to show any revenue or profit impact because the company does this because the company, wants to comply and it wants to show that it cares about employees and so forth. And so it was more of a creating a vibe type thing.
yeah.
And there was no real need to show profitability. But with the backlash that's happened in the United States and the challenges that have happened where they're actually asking companies, well, why exactly are you like, how does this really enhance the company as
Yeah.
a business? How does it make it better? With those questions, suddenly the way I've been doing things for decades and what I've been promoting for decades, suddenly it's kind of what people are looking for now, right? Because now it's important to show that you're having a business
Does that
impact.
blow your head off in a way? Like, do you feel like you've been fighting the good fight for so long, and then all of a sudden now it's just like, oh, I don't have to fight the good fight anymore. People are just needing this, and it's just like it's become like, does it kind of like, did you think this was going to happen? Like if you could have,
No, interesting enough, when I first started my business and I first started positioning it this way, and I had people say like, "Nah, we don't really." I mean, I did have a couple of people that said, "Nah, our company doesn't really focus on how this affects the bottom line. We're really focused on doing the right thing and doing good things for the world and being sort of a good corporate citizen." There was a part of me, because of my own background as a line executive, that thought, I hear that, But the fact is that most organizations don't get big budgets for this kind of work. And I know from experience when I was on the line side of the organization that I could command bigger and bigger budgets because literally when I wanted budget, what I was saying was, give me $1.5 million dollars and I'll secure $30 million dollars of business for you. But DEI and other practices in the organization, especially those back office softer practices, don't present themselves that way. They could, but they don't present themselves
No.
that way. And I always thought, I hear a lot of people talk about like, oh, we're losing budget dollars and so forth. And my position was always because you're presenting it without presenting a clear ROI. And they would say, well, how do you present an ROI to something like this? And, it's so difficult. And I was like, no, it's not difficult at all. Like, for example, I could have presented what I was doing as being, we want to get more women in leadership. And then later on, try to figure out, well, how did that benefit the company? But I literally started it on purpose in order to create that revenue and at the same time to create that opening. Let's say, for example, you're in a company, right? And you discover that they have extraordinary turnover. Their turnover is above average by 6, 7 percentage points. You dig into the numbers and you find out, let's keep with the women example, that women are leaving faster than men.
Yeah.
You dig a little deeper and you find out the reason why. It's not easy to leave for maternity, and it sure is not easy when you come back. At the rate the companies change today, by the time you come back, it's almost like you're entering a new company, and it's not frictionless. So a lot of people end up leaving, or they fall off, or they go into other jobs and so forth. And that's costing the company, let's say, 10 million US dollars. Because when you've got a big company, all those little bits add
Yeah.
up very,
Add
very
up.
quickly, right?
Absolutely they
Yeah,
do. Yeah.
yeah. So let's say you turn around now you want to attack that. There's two ways that you can present that when you're preparing to take that on as a project. You could turn around and say, we have a lot of high female turnover and we're trying to reduce that turnover and we're trying to make this place more welcoming and easier for females to work here. And you're going to get sort of like like, yes, we
Okay.
feel that in our heart. Okay, it's a good idea, right? But if you turn around and you say to them, you know what? I'm going to take $60,000 from my budget and I'm going to invest it in a program in order to attack this issue that's costing you $10 million. dollars. And I'm going to attempt to bring that down to half the first year and maybe try to totally eliminate it the next year. You're saying the same thing. You're still going to help the women in the company to have a better experience working in the company. But the way that you're presenting it, that's going to resonate with a CFO very
Yeah, because it's
quickly.
got the result. It's got the ROI, like you say. It's a return on investment.
It's a return on investment. And I always say lead with that. And the minute you open your mouth and you say that you're going to do something, say, my goal is to save the company $5 million. dollars. And then go on to, and here's how I plan on doing it. I've discovered that the reason why the organization has high turnover is women leave more than men. And the reason the women leave faster than men is for this reason. And for $50,000, we can close that hole rather than saying, and we're going to do this program and that program and so forth. And then the yawning starts, right? So you want to make sure that you get that attention right
Right
away
away.
by
Yeah, I love
talking
it.
about what's top of mind to them, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
It's not rocket science, is it? But we quite often get caught up in what we think is right and what we think we need to say when actually we forget about reading the audience and who we're actually talking to at this point in time. And it comes back to me to being it's the business strategic, like it's pulling out those levers and talking and resonating with who you're talking to. I think that's super important. So would you say you're busier, and I hate using the word busy, would you say that you're in demand more than ever based on the current climate in the US at the moment?
Interesting enough, the demand for what I do and the way that I approach it is increasing. I'm focusing on helping the members that I already have, and then also working with some new people, but primarily the members that I have. One thing I wanted to go back to that you were saying before, it's really interesting when you said about talking about that strategy and what's top of mind to the leadership. You know, years ago, there was this fellow by the name of Dale Carnegie.
Who, sorry?
Dale Carnegie. And Dale Carnegie, back in the 1940s, wrote several books. He was primarily ran a school for public speaking. I actually worked with them many, many years ago. I actually went to some of their programs. And one of the things that he said, one of his rules for engaging other people, which is so simple, was speak in terms of the other person's interests.
100%. I guess that's
Right?
what I was trying to say earlier, but you've said it just way clearer.
Yeah,
Than,
and that's just a straight quote from it. Speak in terms of the other person's interests. If you're talking to a community group and you've donated, let's say you've donated $5,000, and this is true for one of my members. They donated $5,000 to a community for a fair that they had, right? And basically, he goes in front of the Latin American, the Hispanic community, and he says, we donate $5,000 as an organization because we support this. Then go to the CFO and say, we invested $5,000 in this event. And as a result of that, we hired 10 new people, which would have cost us $6,000 a piece. So instead of $60,000, we carved that out of the five, and we got 3 new patients for our hospital who are scheduled to spend somewhere in the neighborhood of $150,000 with us. So we got 150 here, 60,000 here, $210,000. We invested 5,000. That's the CFO conversation. The conversation with the community is we care about you and we put $5,000 into your function. So it's a matter of knowing how to tell the story that's
around,
interesting
yeah,
to
100%.
that person.
Yeah, I could not
Yeah.
agree more. And you know what I love? I love that it's business good, it's social good, right? Like at the end of the day, like we're talking about commercial realities here when you're talking to the CFO. Excuse me, but there's always a social good to what you're doing, right? Do you know what I mean? Like from a DNR
Precisely.
EI perspective, it's not all just, commercial, driven. And there's this it's all encompassing, if you ask me. It's a whole being business approach, like to, bring the two. And there's a great book by Mahali Csikszentmihalyi around good business. I don't know if you've read that, but it's like he talks a lot about this, like in terms of like there's the scale with scale's the wrong thing, but he talks about like people are at their happiness, and then there's like when the profit hits and like when people plateau off, like it's just, but it's exactly what you're talking about here. I'm not explaining myself very well, but this is the point: is it's good business, it's social good, it's commercial good, good's wrapped up around all of it, which is absolutely what it's about.
Exactly. And the people who do the work, the people who do this work in many cases are people who really care and they want to do social good. And the thing that I try to make clear is that you can do commercial good while doing social good, to put the way you just put it right now. Interesting enough, when you do things that really produce economic good, that tends to be when you really do social good. And I'll give you an example. I'll give you a really good example. Let's say, for example, you're in a company that's doing something kind of small. The intention is good, but they're celebrating, let's say, Women's History Day or History Month, right? So they're celebrating. In America, it's Women's History Month. So I think in all of Europe and in other places, I think it's March 8th is Women's History Day or something like that. But in
That's
any
International Women's Day. There's International.
International Women's Day. That's correct. That's correct. So International Women's Day in America, they have History Month, Women's History Month, which is in the March timeframe also. And they can do a celebration and they can do different things. But the bottom line is that the condition of the women hasn't changed in the organization. They're still being paid whatever they're paid, which is 80 cents to the dollar. They still have maybe churning over faster than men because the organization doesn't have the right support mechanisms for them. Now, what I'm saying is when you do things like directly address things like pay gaps, directly address things like, for example, the lack of support, let's say for women who are at the age where they're leaving and coming back to the workforce because of motherhood. When you directly address those things, they have a financial impact on the organization because
100%.
whatever you're investing on one end, you're making more than that on the other end. And at the same time, you're doing social good. So you could do something small. You could spend a couple of $1,000s in a festival and get no ROI, except that everybody gives you smiley faces on the survey, or you could do something significant. It might cost a little more, but the return on investment is a lot larger, and the return on social impact is a lot larger as
Yeah,
well.
I mean, I've got so many questions, but I'm interested in talking about this a bit more from a futuristic perspective as well, because I feel like for so long, profit was driving everything, and engagements fallen off. And when we're all just about hitting numbers, and yet we've got this attrition rate happening, we've got like disengagement with teams. For me, it feels like we're at a tipping point where good business is, let's just call it good business, is commercial, is social. Like it's all in, like it's and that's not what we've focused on for quite some time. Instead, we've been all around hitting numbers, kind of don't worry about the rest. It's just about drive, drive, drive. And yet, if we looked at everything holistically, we'd be making everything a better place. Like this is for me around the change piece, right? This is about, how do we switch up business so that it is all encompassing and it is all there, but then it's like when you need to talk commercial, you lead with this, but when you need to lead with social good, you lead with this. And I think this is the big point where for me we're at a tipping point where the new world order is more about what you're talking about here, what we're talking about right now. And
Right.
that's what's going to significantly make a difference going forward.
Absolutely. We're beginning to notice more and more, and I think it's because we're a more data-rich society than we ever were before, is the connection between all these things. So you could turn around and you could have a team that you can burn out, and you can have a short-term gain that appears to be a gain, but it's followed by a long tail of losses later when you lose good people or you're not getting the full impact of what they could do. It's really interesting. Some of these organizations that are like, the hustle culture, and they're just, chasing and chasing and chasing. In the meantime, you look at another organization that perhaps is a little more aware of some of the things that we're talking about. And then let's say they're both insurance companies for the sake of an example. And they have 10,000 people each, just to make the math even easier. And this company is producing $20 billion a year in the insurance space with 10,000 people. And this company is producing $10 billion in the insurance space with 10,000 people. In the meantime, they're cracking the whip. They're trying to get everything done yesterday and so forth, et cetera. But their revenue per employee is actually lower than the other
That's what
company.
exactly. That's what, yeah.
Right, right, right. So it's like you look at it and you say to yourself, like, this is like the puppy that chases its tail and doesn't quite catch it, and the dog that walks away and the tail just follows them. There's a lot of things that people do in organizations that create the conditions for long-term sustainable profit and growth other organizations, they
Don't.
just, yeah, they don't do it. They want the instant, let's just, close it. And a lot of it also has to do with the fact that, a lot of our organizational leaders want to make sure that they're showing results during their tenure. And, I had somebody tell me something funny that I'll share with you. I won't tell you who they are, but there's someone from way in my past when I was younger and I was a young line exec. And I was working with this guy, and he was like my boss's boss, but we spent a lot of time together. And he said something that I thought was really strange, and I disagree with. I mean, brilliant guy, but I disagreed with what he said. He turned around and I said, I'm working on this project right now, but I don't know if this is going to be sustainable in like 5 to 10 years out. And he said to me, well, don't worry about it. By then you'll be promoted and it'll be somebody else's problem. Right?
still going on, Joe. That is
I
still
know.
going
Yeah,
on.
that's pretty cynical, right?
Yeah, right.
But
But
it's really, but as a young person, as a guy who was in his 20s at the time and just learning, I like when he said that, it was like I was processing it. I was going like, wow.
you're different. Like you're unique, right? Like you're different. Yeah, it's that's a pretty wild response. Joe, I want to get to the answer you gave to me in terms of my question when booking into the pod around, what's one unique insight or experience in life, leadership, or business that you would like to share. And you said change is necessary to evolve, but it always meets resistance.
That's right.
The key to
That's right.
overcoming that resistance is showing exactly what's at stake in dollars and cents. We've talked a lot about dollars and cents, but I want to kind of
Yeah.
talk to you. Because you called out resistance twice, and resistance is it's what stops us. It's what prevents us from moving forward. Like it's that the fear comes through. Like, yeah, tell us a little bit about your response to that.
Yeah, I mean, that is the quintessential problem that we always face is that evolution is a necessary part of continuing to succeed. Nothing stays the same. All businesses, all businesses and practices exist within these competing forces of wants and needs and so forth, right? And when these shift in any particular way, they shift sometimes in a way that can make a business that was thriving no longer needed, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, they create other opportunities, and it's the speed at which you notice that change and you shift gears that actually has to do with whether you keep moving forward or you're going to fall flat on your face, right? Most people, my experience with most people is that, let's say, I like to use the analogy of two boats, right? You have a beautiful, elegant ocean liner here, and you're in this other boat over here that's not so elegant, right?
Tugboat,
A,
tugboat. I'm thinking a tugboat.
a little tugboat, and the water is kind of cold, right? Now, you have an invitation to go on the ocean liner, and you may be somewhat attracted to going on the ocean liner, but you're also held back by the fact that the water is going to be really cold, right? So you're caught between these two forces. Now, interesting enough, even though the ocean liner is many times better than the tugboat, you're still more influenced by the fear of jumping into that water than you are by the attraction of the ocean liner. I mean, the ocean liner would have to be a million times
But you
better
know what I
in
think
order
of?
to offset that fear. But if I put your tugboat on fire, you will jump into that water and you will swim across to that ocean liner. So in many cases, what it takes to move people is that what they're currently standing on begins to erode. And that's what's actually happened in DEI to some degree. The platform for DEI in the United States was compliance, and it was legal political support. It was image, right? Everybody thought if we don't do this, we're going to look bad to
I
everybody
know,
else,
I know.
right?
Yeah,
Right. That was it. But now they're realizing, well, some people get away with not doing it, some don't, but some do. The laws a lot of pressure is being applied to apply those laws in different ways than they were in the past. Some of them maybe even change. I mean, a lot of people talk about rights. What they really have is privileges. I mean, the government gives you privileges to do something. The
yeah,
government can take that privilege away, right? So once those dynamics change, then suddenly people are more open to doing new things than maybe they were before. But every time as you're going through life, you're always going to be faced with change. Change forces the need for evolution. And then you have fear pushing the other way. What is the right moment to move from here to there? Should I stay here a little longer just in case I'm safe here before I move over there? So you constantly have those forces pushing people. And that's true in any business or in
yeah,
any
I agree. And the
operation.
tugboat analogy and the ocean liner is a great one because if you like, you when you just resist change, the tugboat goes on fire in the end. So, like you don't have control. Like it almost like everything's taken away from you, or whatever happens, happens because you are forced to then move into the change, whether you like it or not, because it's part of, like you say, evolution. I would choose the
Yeah.
ocean liner, just so you know, even though, because I don't like cold water, right? Like I don't love cold water. But if I had that choice, I was just thinking about it as you were telling the story.
I would too.
This is what do you know what I was thinking about? I was thinking about the really warm shower in the ocean liner. I thought, like, it's really cold, I get that, but like, no pain, no gain. Then as soon as
That's
I jump
right.
onto the ocean liner, I'd be banged straight into the warmest, most beautiful shower with the most beautiful warm towel. So that's what I was thinking about.
And think about this. If you do it the way, if you're motivated to do it in the manner that you're saying, you're going to have very little competition crossing from the tugboat to the ocean liner because everybody else is standing there going, oh, should I do it? Should I not? The water's cold. When it's on fire, you're going to be competing to get on that
Yeah,
ladder
100%, 100%.
because
And I'm already
everybody's going to
there.
be
I'm
in the
like,
water.
yeah, I'm like chilling on the ocean liner. Joe, a couple of more questions for you.
Sure.
You're a futurist and an author. Like, I mean, obviously there's a lot of unrest in the world at the moment. There's a lot happening in the world in general. But as a futurist speaker, like what are the kind of trends or themes that you're talking about at the moment? Or what are you seeing? Obviously AI's, come in and it's going full tilt. Like, but what are you seeing from a futuristic perspective, like being that futurist speaker?
Sure. So again, because of the space that I operate in, which is this inclusion space and so
Yeah.
forth, I tend to focus on that. I
And
mean,
that's yeah.
I belong to an association of professional futurists, and I love watching the different dynamics because they all focus on different things. Some of them focus on geopolitical stuff, others focus on other things. My focus is in this particular space of inclusion and diversity. And one of the things that I've been focusing on primarily is, and you touched on a little bit with the AI, with the, first of all, take AI, as AI becomes more uh, ubiquitous and used by organizations, depending on how it's programmed, depending on how it is set up or trained, because in this particular case, this
Yeah.
is a self-learning system. But, AI as a self-learning system, think about it as a child, right? If you take a child and you put him in a home, put him or her in a home where they see particular behaviors happening again and again, that's how they contextualize the world. That's what they think the world is about, right? You put them in a different home, in a different setup, they think the world is about something else. So in the case of AI, if you expose it to the world of, let's say, the 1900s, where the way choices were made, the way people were brought into organizations, you're going to end up with a lot of biases in the way these systems select people for
Yeah.
jobs or even promotions based on old thinking. You're literally institutionalizing an old way of thinking that does not fit into a multicultural, globally connected world. You're connecting it. You're actually making it think that the world is still like the 1950s, where Americans had American jobs and only dealt with other Americans, and maybe
Yeah.
Australians only with Australians, right? And that's not the reality of where we live right now. And you've already seen that in AI. Like, for example, one of the first AIs that I believe it was Amazon who came out with an early AI recruiting model, and they had to scrap it because it would literally pick only men for
Yeah.
certain
Just
positions because historically the data that it was fed showed that men were the ones that succeeded, and
yeah.
the system assumed that that was a feature that it should follow. When they tried disguising that some of the candidates were women, it found very clever ways to figure out that this candidate was a female, and it excluded them. So as AI is being developed, one of the questions that we need to ask ourselves is, what kind of world do we want these AIs to serve? Do we want it to recreate the conditions of the world of the past?
For the
Or do we
future.
want it to create the world of the future, the world that we're entering right now? So a lot of that thinking is important in terms of how we develop these particular tools. In the case of right now, people work in, people talk about hybrid work. That's that's almost yesterday. We actually work in a multi-dimensional workplace today. And that multi-dimensional workplace, if you think of four quadrants, right? Think of four
Yeah.
boxes. You have people that are in the same place at the same time. That's the old model. They all went to the office or whatever. You have people that work in at the same time, but in different places. That's this model where you and I are communicating over technology. You have people that work in the same place, but not at the same time. So they are shift workers. They go to the same place. They don't see each other in the same place. You have people that work not only not in the same time, but not in the same place either, totally asynchronously. They're in different locations
Yeah.
and there are products out there like Loom, I think is one of the ones that's
Yeah.
picked up a lot. I use it a lot. And of course, traditionally email was used a lot for that. So how do you create inclusion in that environment, where your employees are
Yeah.
working not in different time and physical dimensions? How do you create a sense of company? How do you create those connections? Also, the other thing is most of the DEI practices that we have today that were developed in places like, let's say, the United States or the UK, were developed to address specific conditions that existed in those
Mm.
countries, right? Uh, but now we have a global workforce. So how do we make sure that the practices that we have address the needs of people that speak different languages, have different cultures, different belief systems, are living in different, you know, contexts and so forth? And so all of that to me points to the need to create new focus points. And going back to my old theme of looking for how can the organization benefit from some action that I, as an inclusion leader, am taking. The good thing about that is that those actions are somewhat agnostic to whether you're doing them in the United States, in the UK, or in Australia. They're focused on the company and they create a good byproduct for the people that are in the company and their clients. But they're not focused on, well, we need to correct the past wrongs of slavery. Well, they didn't have that in other
No,
countries the way we
no.
had it in the United States.
I love
So
it,
it makes
Joe.
it more global, more
Yeah, but
global.
you're reshaping you're reshaping DEI, like you're reshaping the future. Like in terms of for me, like we've had an existing form, like that's worked or that and it's like I love this whole AI as a child piece and training it to look at things differently, reshape, recreate, what's next. And that whole quadrant piece, fascinating because it's true. Like it's like all the different generations that we have in business these days. Like I think we're at five or six, I think, or five or
We're,
seven.
we're, we're, I think we're five and we're moving toward six
Yeah, it's
eventually because
wild,
as
right?
people
It's wild.
live longer and,
Yeah,
you're going to
yeah,
have
yeah, yeah.
more people in the workforce. And what you said before is spot on. There's one of the futurists, uh, this fellow Peter, he said something when I was interviewing him not long ago. And he said something that I think is hits right on what you were talking about before, which is that when you look at the future, we're not passive observers. We actually can shape it. So you have what the signals are telling you might happen. You have weaker signals that might get stronger and change the trajectory of what might happen. And then you have your own desire of where you want things to go. So it's almost like when you look far enough, it's like you're living in a place that's prone to hurricanes and you see a tropical depression. You don't know if it's going to become a hurricane yet or not. And then that becomes a little more clear. Then you don't know whether it's going to hit your town or another town. But you're not just going to passively sit there and watch it until it
No,
comes
you're
and
gonna do
blows your
something.
house away.
Yeah,
You're going to take action, right? And so that is the way I look at that part of my thinking of futuristic from a futuristic standpoint is that I look at what are the secondary and tertiary effects of what's going on right now, and what do we do to steer that in the direction
yeah.
that we want it to go.
I love it. I love it. Okay, well, final question, and then I'm going to ask you quickly how we find out more about you, but it's a very simple question. go back to you being the 20 in your 20s, that guy, that boss of yours and you are him. And then there's a kid, a young one, asking you that question. Or I can't remember exactly what the question was or what you said to that boss. And he said, "Don't worry, it won't be your problem in 5 years." What would you say to that younger version of you?
My response, if I were in that position, my response would be different from that because I believe that everything that you do is an expression of who you are. It's like signing a painting when you're an artist. And those things that you do can become this legacy that you're building that show that you're somebody who's building sustainability, building an organization that can meet the test of time, or that what you're doing is just basically, momentary fixes in different areas. And so I would say if you want to really be taken seriously as a business person and you want to build that track record of success, then build it on building things that will last the test of time. Things that when you put them in your LinkedIn profile or in your resume and someone says, hey, you did that thing in that company, you can proudly say, and it's still running. And I haven't touched it in 15 years, but other people picked up on it and built on it, and it still drives value. So
Love it.
that, I mean, that's kind of like it's a position I've always taken that
Love
I
it.
feel that what you do, I don't care if you're a carpenter and you're hammering a nail, that's your signature. That is you, and that represents you. Did you do a good job? Did you do it so that it would last
Personal
properly? Or
brand.
did you just schluck it up and try to get it done right away without any thought to what would happen next?
Love it. Joe, thank you so much. It's been an awesome chat. I've loved every minute of this conversation with you. How do we find out more about you?
I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if you look up Joe Santana, on LinkedIn, you'll see a lot of my posts that I put in there. I also have a Substack newsletter called the Biz Clusionist Weekly. So that's Biz, B-I-Z, Clusionist, like inclusionist weekly. And it goes out every Monday. I try to supply some original ideas on how people can take charge of what they're doing now, with all the backlashes and things that are going on, not only here, but around the
The
globe in
world.
different
Yeah.
places as
Love
well.
it.
And so yeah, and of course you can also reach me by my email. I'm happy to share that. It's joe@joesantana.com.
Love it.
So
Thank you,
always happy
Joe.
to chat.
Yeah, I love it. I know. I
Absolutely.
feel like I'm going to be taking you up on more chats as well. So thank you so much. Excuse me, Joe. Oh, I've just lost my voice. Excuse me. So thank you, Joe. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening in New York City. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was such a pleasure talking to
Yeah,
you.
take care.